The summer of 1867 in rural Missouri should have been uneventful. The war was over, the fields were full, and the townsfolk were trying to rebuild. But in a quiet farming settlement outside Sedalia, an 8-year-old boy named Timothy Caldwell was about to become the center of one of the strangest and most unsettling cases in American history. Timothy appeared every bit the model child, polite, obedient, always ready to lend a hand. Yet wherever he went, calamity followed. Children turned up dead. Farm animals were found lifeless under suspicious circumstances. And somehow, Timothy was always there, watching. Dr. Samuel Harding, the area's only physician, began to suspect the impossible, that this pale, soft-spoken boy possessed a mind capable of cold, calculated cruelty far beyond his years. What began as quiet unease would spiral into a tense battle of wits between doctor and child, a battle in which the wrong move could mean death. If stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, now's the time to subscribe. Hit that bell so you don't miss our next dive into America's darkest true mysteries. And if you're already thinking about how this story might end, drop your theory in the comments. We read them all. In the spring of 1866, a boy named Timothy Caldwell stepped from a wagon onto the worn dirt path of his uncle's farm. He carried a small cloth bag, pale hair cropped short, eyes strangely aged. The war had gutted Missouri. Timothy's uncle, Thomas Caldwell, returned from years of hardship to find debts heavy and the farm weakened. His partner, Samuel, shared the endless work, their home quiet, but pressed under the weight of survival. Timothy's father had died in uniform, far from home. His mother's brother attempted to raise him, but illness struck the household. The boy was eventually sent to Thomas without protest, his face a mask of polite calm. Neighbors soon remarked on the boy's manners. He answered respectfully, addressed elders with formality, and obeyed without hesitation. To most, he appeared the model child, the kind any guardian might proudly call his own in difficult times. Yet something about Timothy unsettled certain observers. He never played with other boys, never joined in idle chatter. He worked tirelessly from sunrise to sunset, his face steady, unmoved by strain, unmoved by simple joys of youth. The Patterson farm bordered Caldwell land. Elias Patterson, a wiry man with a sharp eye, noticed his chickens grew uneasy whenever Timothy approached the fence. The birds clustered together, refusing to roam freely while he stood watching. Elias confided to his brother that animals could sense what men might miss. The brother laughed, yet admitted the boy's stillness felt unnatural, like watching a windless field where nothing stirred though the day demanded movement. One warm afternoon in June, Dr. Samuel Harding, the county's only physician, met Timothy in town. Harding, hardened by battlefield medicine, had learned to read people swiftly. Something in the boy's unwavering gaze caused an immediate unease. Timothy answered Harding's questions clearly. His posture was proper, his tone measured, and he lacked the restless gestures common to children. Yet Harding felt observed, as though the boy was recording him with deliberate precision. The Caldwell farm sat apart from town, but Timothy was often seen far afield. Travelers noticed him alone in distant pastures, tending cattle with a steadiness beyond his years, his presence almost silent in the long grass. By midsummer, signs of war still marked every road and fence. Thomas and Samuel worked to restore their livelihood, grateful for Timothy's obedience. Neither yet recognized the colder, hidden quality lurking in the boy's pale blue eyes. Strange events began without clear pattern. A lamb died overnight without wound or sickness. 2 hens were found at another farm, necks broken neatly. People muttered about predators, though none had been spotted in recent months. Elias Patterson noted the deaths often followed Timothy's visits near certain fields. He mentioned this in passing to others, though most dismissed it as coincidence. Still, Elias watched the boy more closely whenever their paths crossed in the open. Dr. Harding, too, kept Timothy in mind after their first meeting. The boy's composure was rare in one so young. Harding wondered if hardship alone could shape such control, or if something far older resided within. Timothy's days passed in a steady rhythm. He woke before light, performed his tasks without prompting, and vanished into the fields without complaint. When spoken to, he replied politely, but his eyes often wandered toward distant points unseen. The few who tried to befriend Timothy found him courteous yet impenetrable. He neither invited nor resisted company, simply existing alongside others without revealing what thoughts moved beneath his measured words and carefully restrained expressions. By the year's midpoint, Timothy was part of the farm's machinery, efficient, tireless, unquestioning. To Thomas and Samuel, he was a gift in hard times. To others, he was something more complicated, perhaps something far more dangerous. And so the boy settled into the farm's rhythm, the hills and pastures holding him like a stone holds shadow. Whatever history had shaped him remained locked away, waiting for the day it would begin to surface. The first tragedy came during a sweltering August afternoon. Little Marcus Fletcher, son of the town blacksmith, wandered near Willow Creek. The water was shallow, yet by evening the boy would be lying lifeless beneath its surface. Timothy was the one who found him. He arrived at the Fletcher home just before supper, clothes damp, voice steady. "Mr. Fletcher, I found Marcus by the creek. He's not breathing," he said without hesitation or visible panic. A search party rushed to the scene. Marcus lay face down in water barely reaching 18 inches. Dr. Harding pronounced drowning as the cause, though such accidents were rare where local boys played without supervision. Timothy's account was unusually precise. He described Marcus's exact position, the way his shirt snagged on a branch, and the murky color surrounding his face. When pressed, Timothy said he'd been searching for a lost calf. Thomas Caldwell confirmed a calf had indeed gone missing earlier. Yet 2 days later, the animal was found grazing nearly a mile from the creek, nowhere near where Marcus's body had been discovered. At the funeral, Timothy sat between Thomas and Samuel, head bowed. Neighbors noted his respectful stillness. When Mr. Fletcher thanked him for quick action, Timothy replied with measured regret, saying only he wished he'd found Marcus sooner. Elias Patterson, watching from the back, noticed something else. When grief overtook grown men and Marcus's father wept openly, Timothy's expression never shifted. His eyes, pale and watchful, scanned the crowd as though studying their every reaction. 3 weeks later, another death struck the community. Henrik Larson, an older logger turned beekeeper, was found at the bottom of Devil's Bluff, his neck broken. The bluff overlooked the same creek where Marcus had drowned. Once again, Timothy discovered the body. He claimed he had been walking home from town when he saw Henrik's hat snagged on a thorn bush, prompting him to climb down and investigate. Dr. Harding examined the scene. The old man had likely died instantly, yet scattered around the body lay an unusual number of dead bees, far from any hive, concentrated directly where he had fallen. Timothy suggested perhaps the bees attacked Henrik, causing him to lose his footing. Yet the hives atop the bluff were undisturbed, the bees active but calm. Harding found no sign of an actual swarm. In September, tragedy struck again. 6-year-old Jacob Mills vanished while playing near his family's cabin. Timothy joined the search, showing remarkable stamina for his age, guiding volunteers through dense woods with uncanny familiarity. On the 4th day, Timothy appeared at the Mills cabin at dawn, claiming he'd found an old well north of their property. He said he heard faint crying from inside, the opening hidden under brush. Jacob was pulled from the well alive but gravely weakened. Despite Dr. Harding's efforts, the boy died within hours. Harding found Timothy's discovery troubling. The well was so well concealed it would be nearly impossible to locate by chance. Returning later, Harding noted the brush and logs covering the well had been arranged with deliberate precision. It looked less like chance and more like someone had intended the opening to remain hidden for days. Harding began keeping detailed notes. The accidents seemed too numerous, too deliberate in their circumstances. Timothy's presence at each tragedy was no longer coincidence. Something far colder was moving beneath his polite exterior. From that autumn forward, Harding watched Timothy with clinical focus. He no longer saw a quiet, helpful boy. He saw a presence within the community that drew disaster, the way a lodestone draws iron filings. By October, the pattern had grown difficult to dismiss. Accidents and deaths followed Timothy like a shadow, and while no one could prove wrongdoing, whispers began circulating quietly in barns, workshops, and fields across the county. Livestock deaths troubled neighboring farms. Chickens were found with broken necks, clean and deliberate. Pigs developed mysterious injuries that worsened overnight. Horses went lame without explanation, forcing farmers to put down animals once considered their strongest workers. Elias Patterson confided to Dr. Harding that he had lost 17 chickens in just 2 months. The killings were too precise, the damage too exact to be the random work of foxes or wild predators. Harding examined the latest carcasses. The injuries were targeted with knowledge of anatomy, precise enough to kill instantly without leaving ragged wounds. It was the work of someone experimenting, not an animal killing in hunger or panic. Other farmers reported similar incidents. James Wickham lost 3 calves under bizarre circumstances, each apparently strangling itself in ways no experienced farmer could recall witnessing. Robert Dunham's prized bull broke a leg in a ditch it should have avoided easily. In nearly every case, Timothy had been seen nearby shortly before the injury or death. Always polite, always greeting neighbors properly, he appeared harmless. And yet his proximity gnawed at those who noticed the pattern. Harding began visiting the Caldwell farm more often under the pretext of tending to Thomas's lingering back trouble. Each time, Timothy was present, watching the examinations, asking careful, sometimes unsettling questions about anatomy and human frailty. Once, Timothy asked how one could be sure someone was truly dead. "Sometimes people just look asleep," he said casually, explaining that Thomas believed he should know such things in case of emergencies far from town. Harding's medical instincts told him there was more to the curiosity. Timothy's interest lacked any emotional weight. He did not ask out of fear or concern, but from an almost clinical hunger for factual certainty. To test him, Harding began slipping false information into conversations, describing injuries as fatal when they were not, or misattributing symptoms. Timothy never corrected him aloud, but Harding saw the boy silently storing the truth. When Harding spoke about battlefield surgery during the war, Timothy listened with unwavering focus. While most children might flinch at the details, Timothy asked about blood loss, survival rates, and whether wounded men screamed before they died. One particular question chilled Harding. Were they too hurt to make noise? Timothy's tone was polite, detached, as if collecting data for a study. Harding recognized the same cold curiosity he had once seen in certain killers. By late autumn, Harding's journals on Timothy had grown thick. They painted a picture of a boy with an adult's understanding of death, stripped entirely of the empathy that would restrain such knowledge. Still, Harding lacked the evidence needed to act. Timothy's public image remained untarnished. To the community, he was a hard-working orphan, helping his uncle and partner keep their farm alive through an unforgiving season. Then came a conversation that set Harding's resolve. Timothy spoke of a place he liked to visit alone, a cave in the hills. He mentioned it casually, yet Harding sensed there was more behind the admission. Following Timothy's directions, Harding found the cave. Inside lay animal bones arranged neatly, crude tools fashioned from farm implements, and drawings, detailed renderings of animals in various stages of dissection, each paired with precise observational notes. Among the drawings were human figures. Marcus Fletcher by the creek, Henrik Larson at the bluff, Jacob Mills at the well. The notes described their suffering with a detached precision that confirmed Harding's worst fears. Harding left the cave knowing the truth. Timothy was not merely a witness to tragedy. He was the author, the architect, the one guiding events toward death with a patience as dangerous as it was deliberate. Harding left the cave with his pulse pounding, his mind filled with the images and notes he had seen. The evidence was chilling, yet he knew it was gathered in a way the law would not accept. An 8-year-old capable of such deliberate cruelty would be beyond the imagination of most. Harding feared the town would see only a traumatized boy, a victim of hardship, rather than a calculated predator among them. In November, Thomas Caldwell injured his back during the harvest. The injury required daily medical visits, giving Harding regular access to the household and, more importantly, to Timothy, without arousing suspicion among neighbors or community leaders. During these visits, Harding engaged Timothy in longer conversations. The boy spoke with disarming frankness about his experiments, detailing the behavior of injured animals and the differences he had observed between their responses and those of human victims. Timothy described removing eyes from a rabbit, noting the time it remained conscious. He discussed the patterns of breathing in drowning subjects. His tone was that of a scientist explaining results to a colleague. The more Harding listened, the clearer it became. Timothy had been refining his methods deliberately, progressing from insects to small animals, then larger ones, and finally to people. Each step in his path was methodical, purposeful. When Harding pressed about the human deaths, Timothy admitted they were experiments as well. He spoke of them without remorse, explaining that humans understood what was happening, making the process more interesting to observe. It was in one such conversation that Timothy revealed his next intended study. He wanted to test what happened when one harmed someone who trusted completely, someone who would not suspect danger until too late. Harding realized immediately who the intended subjects were, Thomas and Samuel. The calm way Timothy explained his plan was as unsettling as the plan itself, given with the certainty of a man describing tomorrow's weather. That evening, Harding went to Sheriff William Crawford in Sedalia. Crawford was practical, a former Union officer who trusted Harding's judgment, but even he struggled to absorb the implications of what was being described. Harding showed him the drawings, the notes from the cave, and laid out the sequence of events. Most importantly, he recounted Timothy's own statement about his intentions toward his guardians. Crawford's expression hardened at the details. They devised a plan. Harding would visit as usual, bringing medicine that would sedate Thomas and Samuel enough to slow Timothy's efforts. Crawford and 3 trusted deputies would hide nearby, ready to act at the first sign of violence. The morning of the plan, Harding arrived at the farm to an unnatural stillness. No animals stirred, no sounds of chores drifted through the yard. Timothy stood in the doorway, his gaze fixed intently on Harding. Inside, Thomas and Samuel lay in bed, breathing shallowly. Harding recognized the signs of herbal poisoning, the dose carefully calculated to leave them alive but defenseless. Timothy watched, hands scrubbed clean, his expression unreadable but alert. "They won't wake for hours," Timothy said conversationally. "We can talk without interruption." His voice carried anticipation, as if the day had been long awaited, a performance rehearsed in his mind until every step was precise. As they spoke, Timothy began gathering items, rope, a heavy candlestick, knives from the kitchen. He arranged them on a table with deliberate care, explaining that Harding would be the subject of his newest experiment. Harding's pulse raced, but his voice remained steady. As Timothy approached with rope in hand, Harding drew his pistol, ordering him to step back. The boy's eyes narrowed with interest, not fear, as deputies stormed through the door. Timothy fought with unexpected speed and strength, producing a hidden knife and slashing at Harding's arm. The deputies subdued him, binding his wrists. Even in defeat, his pale eyes held the same cold intelligence that had always unnerved Harding. After Timothy's arrest, Harding led Sheriff Crawford and his deputies to the cave. The air inside was cool and still, carrying the faint odor of decay mixed with the metallic tang of old blood. Animal bones were stacked in neat piles, arranged by size and type. Some were clean and brittle from age, others fresh enough to suggest recent activity. Each grouping spoke of deliberate categorization, not random disposal. Crude tools lay on a flat stone shelf. Sharpened farm implements, wire and wood-handled knives dulled from repeated use. They bore the marks of modification. Handles reshaped for smaller hands, blades filed for precise cutting. Scattered across the walls were drawings, some on scraps of paper, others scratched directly into the stone. Each depicted animals in varying states of injury or dissection, annotated with small, careful handwriting describing reactions and times to death. Harding's stomach tightened as he spotted the human sketches. Marcus Fletcher's likeness by the creek, Henrik Larsson mid-fall from the bluff, Jacob Mills collapsed at the bottom of the well, all rendered with uncanny accuracy. The notes were as cold as they were precise, recording not emotion, but data. Subject remained conscious for 7 minutes, one read. Another described respiration patterns during drowning, the handwriting steady and almost elegant. The deeper they searched, the more the scope became clear. Timothy had built not a hiding place, but a laboratory. A place where cruelty was refined into method, and method sharpened into repeatable procedure. One pile of bones stood apart from the rest, arranged in a semicircle as though for study. Harding recognized some as belonging to larger animals taken from nearby farms, injuries matching those reported by neighbors. Among the papers was a list of plants known for poisonous properties, with notations on preparation and dosage. Harding realized these experiments had moved beyond physical harm into chemical methods of incapacitation and death. Sheriff Crawford studied the evidence in grim silence. Each item confirmed Harding's warnings, yet both men knew the challenge ahead. The law would struggle to convict a child on evidence so morbid and unprecedented. One scrap of paper stood out, an unfinished drawing of Thomas and Samuel lying in their bed, annotations describing stages of paralysis. The timing matched exactly the morning Harding and Crawford intervened. Harding felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cave's cool air. This was not imagination or impulse. Timothy had intended to kill his guardians that day and had rehearsed every detail beforehand. The deputies removed every item, sealing the cave's entrance with heavy timbers. Crawford ordered the site kept off public record, fearing its contents might inspire morbid curiosity or draw unwanted attention to the community. As they left, Harding glanced back into the shadows. He knew the place had been an extension of Timothy's mind, methodical, detached, and patient. Even with the boy in custody, the echo of it lingered. In his journal that night, Harding wrote, "The cave is the truest portrait of Timothy Caldwell, a mind stripped of empathy, devoted entirely to the study of suffering, undisturbed by conscience or remorse." The morning of the planned intervention carried an unnatural stillness. Harding approached the Caldwell farm in his buggy, eyes scanning the yard. No animal stirred. The air felt heavy, as if bracing for violence. Timothy appeared in the doorway before Harding could dismount. He stood motionless, pale blue eyes fixed on the doctor, the faintest trace of anticipation in his expression. "I've been waiting for you," he said evenly. Inside, Thomas and Samuel lay in their bed, breathing shallowly, skin tinged gray. Harding recognized the signs of controlled poisoning, a dosage measured to render them helpless yet alive, prepared for whatever Timothy had planned. "They won't wake for hours," Timothy said. "That gives us time to talk." His tone was almost conversational, as though announcing an afternoon's leisure instead of the prelude to something far more dangerous. Harding asked what he meant to do. Timothy began gathering rope, a heavy candlestick, and several knives, placing them on the table with care. Today's experiment involves you, he said, almost cheerfully. Harding's pulse quickened, but his voice remained steady. Timothy explained he wanted to see how someone who understood the danger would act, whether they would fight, flee, or sacrifice themselves for others in harm's way. You're perfect for this, Timothy said, arranging the tools like a surgeon setting out instruments. You know what I am. That makes it more interesting. His eyes never left Harding's face as he spoke. As Timothy moved closer with rope in hand, Harding drew his pistol from his medical bag. Step away, he ordered. Timothy glanced at the weapon with curiosity rather than fear, noting its make and capacity. That's 6 shots, Timothy said calmly. How many people are you protecting? Thomas, Samuel, yourself, and the men outside? That's all your bullets. His arithmetic was precise, his confidence unsettling. He stepped closer, voice low, almost hypnotic. You want to know if I was born this way. You want to know if there are others like me. You're curious, Doctor. Admit it. Each statement rang true. Harding felt the pull of that curiosity, even as the danger loomed. Timothy's understanding of human weakness, especially intellectual pride, was as sharp as any knife in his possession. The boy moved suddenly, producing a hidden blade and slashing at Harding's arm. Harding blocked, twisting Timothy's wrist until the weapon clattered to the floor. But Timothy had another knife concealed in his clothing. Their struggle was violent and fast. Timothy fought with practiced precision, aiming for vital points, his smaller frame offset by speed and agility. Harding's strength kept him in the fight, but the boy's skill was undeniable. The commotion brought Crawford and his deputies charging through the back door. They found Harding grappling with Timothy, while Thomas and Samuel lay unconscious in bed, oblivious to the scene unfolding around them. Deputy Mitchell seized Timothy from behind, wrestling him to the ground. The boy ceased struggling almost instantly once restrained, his breathing steady, his expression calm, the same cold intelligence in his eyes as always. You can't prove anything, Timothy said quietly. Nobody will believe a child did all those things. His voice was neither boastful nor afraid. It was the statement of someone convinced of his own protection. Crawford looked down at him, jaw set. Maybe not. But we don't need to prove everything. Trying to kill your family is enough to lock you away. Timothy smiled faintly as though already planning ahead. As the deputies led him out, Harding knew the confrontation had ended, but the larger struggle had not. Timothy's removal from the farm was only the beginning of a new, more complicated danger. Timothy was taken to the county jail under heavy guard. The deputies kept him in a cell away from other inmates, unsure if his influence could spread even without physical contact or weapons. Sheriff Crawford presented the evidence from the cave to county prosecutors. As Harding had predicted, they dismissed the materials as the work of a disturbed child processing trauma rather than proof of premeditated murder. The pattern of deaths was labeled coincidence. Timothy's presence at each scene explained as unfortunate happenstance. Only the attempted killing of Thomas and Samuel, witnessed by multiple lawmen, could not be written off so easily. Even so, Missouri law in 1867 had no clear path for prosecuting someone so young for such crimes. He was too dangerous for an orphanage, too young for adult sentencing under the harshest statutes. Legal and medical experts from across the region argued over his fate. Some insisted he could be rehabilitated. Others believed he was beyond saving, a danger that would only grow with time. A compromise was reached. Timothy would be committed to the Missouri State Hospital for the Insane in Fulton, placed under observation by the most experienced alienists available in the region. Harding volunteered to accompany him, documenting every detail during the transfer and initial months. Timothy spoke little on the journey, watching passing towns and fields with the same measured interest he gave to human faces. At the hospital, Timothy adapted with unnerving speed. Within weeks, he learned routines, memorized staff schedules, and identified which attendants could be influenced through flattery, compliance, or carefully feigned vulnerability. To some orderlies, Timothy appeared to be improving. He could produce tears on command, speak remorsefully about his past, and express gratitude for his treatment. Harding recognized these as rehearsed performances. In truth, Timothy was studying the hospital as he had studied the farm, cataloging weaknesses and testing responses. His journal entries, written as therapy, were, Harding suspected, coded records of these observations. Harding noted that Timothy's understanding of emotion was purely mechanical. He described happiness as the face people make when they want something to continue, and sadness as the face they use to get help. In private conversations, Timothy shared ideas for future experiments, each more elaborate than the last. His focus shifted toward methods of psychological torment, testing human reactions without necessarily ending life immediately. After 18 months, unexplained incidents accumulated. Patients in fair health died suddenly. Accidents occurred in areas Timothy had recently visited, and staff reported the sensation of being watched even when he was supposedly confined. Dr. Fitzgerald, a visiting psychiatrist, discovered Timothy's therapeutic writings contained a cipher. Decoded, they revealed detailed escape plans, manipulations of staff behavior, and evaluations of which personnel posed the greatest threat to his freedom. Security tightened, but Timothy adapted. He used new restrictions to refine patience and misdirection, shifting from overt influence to gathering information that might be useful when the right opportunity arrived. In the summer of 1868, Timothy vanished during a routine transfer between hospital buildings. The official report blamed procedural failure. Harding believed it was the execution of a plan crafted over many months. For Harding and Crawford, the arrest had been a victory, but the aftermath proved it was temporary. Timothy was now free, older, more experienced, and certain to continue his work beyond the institution's walls. After Timothy's disappearance, Harding began collecting reports from across the Midwest. Many described strange accidents, unexplained animal deaths, and the quiet presence of a helpful, unusually composed boy who vanished from communities as quickly as he appeared. The details were hauntingly familiar. Livestock killed with surgical precision, children found dead in circumstances that defied simple explanation, adults meeting sudden ends after seemingly minor mishaps. In each case, suspicion arose too late to act. Timothy would now be older, stronger, and far more practiced. Harding feared the years of studying human behavior inside the hospital had only sharpened his ability to manipulate and avoid detection. The challenge was that there were no reliable photographs, only written descriptions, pale hair, blue eyes, and the unsettling calm that seemed to mark him. By the time anyone noticed, he would already be gone. Harding kept detailed files, tracking each suspicious case. Though unprovable, he was convinced many were Timothy's work, experiments continuing in new forms, adjusted to suit different environments and more capable victims. The Caldwell farm was abandoned after Thomas and Samuel recovered. Neither could bear to remain in the place where they had unknowingly housed danger for nearly 2 years. The land eventually passed into other hands. The cave where Harding had found the evidence was sealed by Crawford's order. Word spread quietly that animals refused to graze near it, and locals avoided the area as if an unseen shadow lingered there. Harding's journals, filled with observations and theories, were left to his son upon his death in 1891. They contained hundreds of pages analyzing Timothy's case and pondering the nature of moral absence in human beings. He wrote that Timothy was not an anomaly, but a glimpse of what humanity could become without empathy or conscience. If alive, he would be a man now, perhaps more dangerous than ever before. The idea that someone could understand human psychology so completely, yet see others only as material for experimentation, was a thought Harding could not set aside in his final years. Reports of strange events continued into the 1880s. Harding suspected that Timothy's trail extended farther than Missouri, reaching towns and settlements where no one knew his history and thus could not recognize the danger. Thomas and Samuel lived the rest of their days under assumed names, wary of the possibility that Timothy might return. The fear never left them, shaping every choice until the end of their lives. To Harding, the most chilling truth was Timothy's adaptability. He could become what people needed to see, a polite helper, a curious youth, a hard worker, until it was too late to resist him. Harding described him as a predator in the skin of a boy, unbound by the conscience that keeps the rest of us from the edge. He believed such minds could emerge anywhere, in any time. Even without proof of his later actions, the case changed discussions about criminal responsibility and childhood innocence. It challenged the idea that all young lives could be redirected toward good with enough guidance. Harding's last written words on the matter were stark. If Timothy Caldwell still walks among us, he carries with him the sum of all he has learned, and that is a weight no one should underestimate. The story of Timothy's vanishing point remains one of the most unsettling mysteries in the region's history, a reminder that some dangers are not born from the dark, but carry it quietly, hidden behind pale blue eyes.